don't like to look at my past, or I don't care about my past that much. But still, it's quite ironic. You walk in circles, and the time always brings you back. It's like my memory functions a haunting you in sometimes. So photo functions more or less like a memory or a note which may suddenly wake you up.
The last time you occupied a stage in Boston, you were missing. Your absence was signified by a green military coat on an empty chair. That was April 11th, 2011, at Harvard's Graduate School of Design. Having been taken into custody at the Beijing International Airport on April 3rd, you had been missing for 8 days. Less than a month before your detainment, MIT Press had published an English language translation of selections from your weekly blog, a blog that the Chinese government had shut down 2 years earlier. I think everyone in this room knows at least the rough outlines of the story from there. Solitary confinement, sleep deprivation, the bulldozing of your studio, house arrest, beatings, humiliations, the international outcry from artists and art institutions, and the eventual return of your passport and move to Berlin. But what I doubt anyone in this room remembers is that within a week of your detainment, Madame Liu Yandong, then the highest-ranking female member of the Chinese Politburo and vice premier of the People's Republic of China, came to MIT to meet with Susan Hockfield, the then president of MIT, to discuss ways of deepening the exchange of technology, talent, and ideas between MIT and China, and to sign letters of intent for more extensive cooperation and collaboration between MIT and Chinese universities. When I heard that such a powerful member of your country's government was going to be a guest at MIT, I decided that it would be an appropriate gesture to give her a copy of Ai Weiwei's blog in English as a gift, not only as an example of what I considered to be among the very best work that we were doing at the MIT Press, but as a way of letting her know that the intellectual exchange she desired between MIT and China was already alive and well. And perhaps also to make the point that the voice of her country's most important contemporary artist and public intellectual had not been silenced. Ai Weiwei, we didn't know where you were, but your texts were informing the thinking of MIT students and influencing the discourse of American campuses from wherever you might be. I'm sure you can imagine the rest of the story. Security protocols prevented the vice premier from actually receiving the book, but the attempt was made and the point was made. Now, as much as the Western media makes of you as an A-list power artist, as much as you are routinely compared to Andy Warhol, as close as you were to Allen Ginsberg, and as much as you are admired by some of us for being a top-tier blackjack player in the casinos of Atlantic City and the streets of New York in your 20s and 30s, the road from where you were once to where you are now has been riddled with challenges, to say the least. You were born under the 5 Stars of China, and you were one of the original members of the Stars art group, but you were not born a star. At age 1, you were sent with your family to Northwest China, where your father, Ai Ching, a distinguished poet, spent more than 20 years in re-education, cleaning bathrooms in a forced labor camp. And long before you made the epic film Human Flow about the current refugee crisis, you had been displaced numerous times from your own places of dwelling. Your acts on behalf of human rights victims and your belief that architecture, at its best, can redesign a state entails an aesthetics of pain as well as a practice of justice. Being an artist does not always equate with courage or with putting one's personal sovereignty, health, and freedom at risk. Many great artists know very well how to protect themselves. You, Ai Weiwei, do not play it safe. You put it all on the line for your people. Your work is a gift not only to them, but to all people who dream of freedom. Okay, I could go on like that, but let's get to this evening. This event sold out in a day. No empty chairs here tonight to drape with green coats. There is thrill and excitement in this hall tonight. We all know how rare a visit like this is and how fortunate we are to share some time with you. There is only so much of it, and you only have so much to give. Thank you for the considerable effort I know it took for you to get here. Thanks to your team, especially Jennifer Ng and Daryl Leung, and your incredible colleagues at Chambers Fine Art in New York and Beijing, who are co-publishing your new book with us, especially the gallery's owner, Chris Mao, who initiated a conversation about this book with me 2 years ago, and the director, Dan Chen, without whom there would absolutely be no book. Dan Chen, I've also never met, but hope to before this evening is over. If it weren't for our MFA friends, none of us would be here tonight. Matthew Teitelbaum, director of the MFA, warmly embraced this proposal well after the MFA's fall calendar was fixed. None of this would have happened without the precise and gracious expertises of Katie Getchell and Kristen Hoskins. I'm so impressed by the work of both of you. At the MIT Press, this event had and continues to have the unwavering support of Amy Brand, our intrepid director, and of Molly Grote and Kate Silverman-Wilson. To help offset the book's production cost, we had a generous grant from the Muriel Cooper Fund. I want to thank Nicholas Negroponte, who I believe is also here tonight, who more than anyone else has helped to preserve Muriel Cooper's legacy. And last, but most, I want to thank my colleague Janet Rossi, who coordinated and oversaw every detail of the book's production with a printer in Verona and every last correction with Ai Weiwei's studio in Berlin, miraculously managing to get copies here tonight against what seemed like impossible odds even a week ago. Thank you, Janet. Now, a few final words about the book itself, since its publication is why Ai Weiwei is here tonight. Ai Weiwei, Beijing Photographs, is a visual autobiography of a critically formative decade of one artist's development, containing over 600 photographs taken in Beijing between 1993 and 2003. Ai Weiwei started taking pictures early on and didn't stop, the way he would later blog and tweet. He shot the way Warhol did, daily, habitually, compulsively, recording everywhere he went, what he saw, who he was with, first with a camera, then with an iPhone. Stephanie Tung and John Hancock, who also join us tonight, worked closely with Ai Weiwei to cull these images from an archive of over 40,000 photographs to those finally chosen for the book. As they articulate in their introductions, the book that is being launched tonight is not only unique among bookworks produced by artists, it's not only unique among bookworks produced by this artist, it is unique among photo books produced by any artist. I'm sure Ai Weiwei is well aware that, that the empty chairs, or the empty chair at the GSD a number of years ago, is poetically counterpointed by all of the occupied chairs tonight. I believe it's now time for the conversation between I and Christina Yu to begin. Christina is the Museum of Fine Arts curator of the Art of Asia and a noted scholar of both contemporary and historic Chinese art. So, Christina, over to you, and please welcome Ai Weiwei.
So it seems like we should start our conversation about books. And let's talk a little bit about this book that we're looking at today and tonight. And as Roger said, it is a collection of photos that you took between 1993 and 2003. And he also told us that about 600 photos were selected from more than 40,000 that you've taken in this 10 years time period. So can you talk a little bit about how the idea of the book come about? What's the process of selecting photos?
I started taking photos casually when I was around 82, 83, when I just moved to New York. That time I have plenty of time, but fields have not much to do. So I think maybe I should record the time. I know even myself not functioning very well as an artist, but still I think the time passing is important. I should record the time even, I'm not very functioning well, it's as a young student trying to be an artist in New York in the 80s is not an easy task. So, but I still think back, I did maybe about 10,000 photos. That time still I was very poor, so I don't even print it. I just put the negatives in the refrigerator. And till around 93, I moved back to China. So that time I developed those negatives with one assistant. And so that's the first book I published, is between 83 to 93. And I think anybody will be surprised. Even the photo you took at the time, you think serves non-importance, but later the time gives its importance. It gives the weight, gives a lot of meaning to those moments. Even so then I realized the photo is not the reality; it's parallel to our life, and it has its own life. But I still taking photos between 93 till now. But this book covers from 1993 to 2003. That 10 years. So I take even more photos, maybe 10 times or more photos. And still that period of time, if we look back, is very important because that's still another 10 years I have nothing to do. I come back to China. China already become another society. It's not a society I'm familiar with, but a very capitalized society. People trying to become rich, and they do anything possible to make a difference. So I feel I'm an outsider. I'm in my nation. I become foreigner again. So I go to antique market. I start to later to publish underground books, and made the first gallery space in China to show local artists. It's just trying to find something to do. But and besides that, I took those photos. And till 2004, I had my first art show. So this is right before I become an artist again. So that period of history looks quite boring because the book doesn't really have an important glamorous image in there, but it's very truthful recording of China as a nation. China, that period of time, also very important, because after 1989, after China crashed down the, Tiananmen students, there's a period of time from 89 to about before the Olympics, 2008, China really struggled to trying to be accepted by international world, and also trying to establish itself. So seemingly as a quiet period of time, but it really is like a time before a storm. So, but my photo, I think, not only recorded my surroundings, but also about the time at that time, about China at that time. So it has some interesting aspect in it.
Well, maybe those photos, when you were taking them, they seem mundane, but actually looking back, especially for us, trying to understand you as an artist, as an activist, and understanding what was happening in China at the time, it was actually quite meaningful. I think you covered so many grounds, so we will slow you down a little bit and dive into some of the details, okay? So let's look at this first image first. So first of all, can you tell me who are in the photos?
It's, well, the one on the left, or my left, is my father. The younger one is me. Now I look like the older one, but actually the older one passed away on 1996, 3 years after I went back to China. And that's the only excuse I can have to go back, because I promised myself I will never go back. And but I changed my mind. That's why I don't trust myself so much. And at the end of his life, I said, okay, this is the last excuse I can, to go back. So I went back. He's in hospital. This is I often go to hospital to see him. He recognized me, but not much communication. And I remember one sentence he told me. He said, this is your home. You shouldn't live here like a guest. Just be yourself and do whatever you think you like to do. I always remember this, especially when he passed away. And I think that's the last meaningful sentence he told me, to be yourself and to take the consequence of be yourself. So very often we're not act that way. So that's my father, and he's a poet. He studied in Paris and in the 1930s. Then right after he come back to China, he was sentenced for years. So during his spending time in jail, he became a poet, because in the jail he cannot pen. And he became a very well-known poet, maybe the most well-known poet in China. And this is a photo of us, one of the last photos. So
something's very touching about this photo for me is that there's a detail that your hand is on top of your father's hand. And I know in traditional Chinese culture, it's not very common for family members to express your feelings by touching each other.
You're very sensitive. I never touch my father, and this is a moment he doesn't move that much, so I put my hands on his skin. It's kind of, you can feel the temperature is a little bit cold, and the skin is already old man's skin. And that's probably a maximum for Chinese to show their affections. It's true, Yeah.
So after you moved away, while you are reconnecting with your family, especially your father, you're also playing a very important role in the very small but close community of artists active in Beijing at the time. So here are some photos that you took or somebody took of you of artist gatherings. And can you tell us how the gatherings were taking place, what was your role with this community, and what you were trying to accomplish or achieve by getting together and doing gatherings, talks, and exhibitions?
The photo on my side is probably first Chinese art show. It's only showed in my living room, because there's no galleries simply in China. There's only some art space in foreigners' hotel or diplomat compound, somebody's apartment. So I live in ordinary neighborhood. So artists I know said I want to have a show. I said, you can show in my apartment. So this is my apartment, and we invite all the people in Beijing who may care about art. That's amount of them. It's not many, but those people now become quite well-known. This Fan Dian, who is head of a central art university. This Xu Bing sitting there, and this on the one seat far away is Wei Jingsheng, who is maybe #1 political prisoner just been released. It's a group of people among the early movement of Chinese contemporary art. They call the Star Group. And the next photo is I'm part of this art and performance practice. Among the few performance artists, Zhang Huan, Ma Liuming, and Cang Xin, those artists, we are in a little village called East Village, later being destroyed by local police. So you see my activities quite associated with those people.
So at that time, a lot of artists were really looking up to you. You're somebody who just came back from China, brought a lot of ideas and exposures to Western art, and you also published very important books, sometimes even like manifestos, including the Black, White, and Gray 3 volumes. So was there a sense of mission that you were gathering together to do something to change what was happening in China at the time?
Probably I was only one artist, stayed in United States for 12 years, and I also, and I know very deeply about what contemporary practice in New York, and I basically went to all the museum shows and galleries. So the people, when they see me come back from New York, they think I'm a living Buddha. I can tell. Yeah, they really gathered around me and always ask me questions: how we become an artist, or how we can catch attention, or what to make an artist successful. And certainly, I'm not in the position to tell them because I'm such a failure. But still, they don't believe me. They think I did everything, has some kind of purpose there. So, but one thing I trying to emphasize to the people in there, I said you should respect your own life and really reflects your own condition. Because if we think about a Western artist, doesn't matter how strong they are, they can never imagine or create the condition as your condition. It's very valuable, even it's very difficult. So many artists did works which in that direction, like Zhang Huan did early works, hanging himself under a ceiling, lets blood come out. But the photo is not here. And also, he did another work sitting in a public toilet, which is very, very dirty and very messy condition. So that gave a local artist maybe a new idea to respect their own life and to pay much more attention rather than think about how West would look at them.
So you kept saying that you were not doing a lot, you were not achieving a lot, but you are doing something here in this series of photos. So can you tell us what is going on?
Yeah, photos are really like evidence for a crime. Yeah, I cannot even deny. This is a photo I hammered Imperial Qing Dynasty porcelain. I just smashed it,
Right, and we're talking about it in a museum context.
My brother is a collector. He has a very superior eye to pick up beautiful objects, and I have this kind of attitude. Sometimes I get bored. Also, I want to do something which really would against myself, I feel pain when my hammer comes down, but it's before I realize it's already smashed. So, and we took this photo. Actually, to achieve this photo, we took smashed a few of them because it's not easy to take a photo like this. But yes.
Okay. So nowadays when you go to museums, like what we did today, for example, looking through our galleries and looking at the beautiful antiques in the galleries, do you still have the impulse? Or maybe not even impulse, a plan?
No, I become another person. I totally changed my behavior several times already. I'm very good about myself. I know how to self-educate myself, learning from my mistakes, and be a part of a civilized society.
Okay, so what I understand is that actually...
Why don't you just change it to another photo? It's really disturbing.
We can come back to this. Okay, another very iconic image, but also sometimes gives museum curators a little bit headache of how to display them and explain them. So this is a series called Study of Perspectives. And when did you start this series, and what were you trying to convey in these images?
I did those since around 1994-5, when I just arrived in China. That moment, I still, on June 4th, I still go to the, Tiananmen Square. And for no reason, I just want to go to there with my girlfriend at that time. And every time I thought I have to do something, but what can I do? This more underground undercover police than the visitors there, and tourists there. So I took one photo. I don't think they understand my gesture, but but the photo is very solid. The background is, that's good about photography is it takes such a short time, nobody can even understand. So later, I took a few more here and there, mostly because I visit somewhere and I see people take selfies about themselves. That time, the word selfies not even exist. So I take a portrait of my left finger, middle finger, and that becomes some kind of tradition for me. But it's really a childish act, it's really... So I give a good title, Study of a Perspective. It's really when, I think it's really in Renaissance time, the Da Vinci and all those masters, they found a perspective about things, and so it has serves a double meaning. Another photo, that one is park in Beijing, I think. The next one is casino of Taj Mahal. It's Trump's, actually, it's our president's, your president's casino. But that time, nobody can ever imagine he will become a president. So I did this very disgraceful act. I deeply, feel sorry and apologize for that.
Have you thought of sending him that photo?
I don't think he would care.
So we're going a little bit chronologically and following the stories of this book. And so here we are looking at late 1990s. This is when you started to build some large-scale studios outside Beijing. And it also seems a time when your works become increasingly more ambitious, both in scale, in its labor intensity, and its message. So, it's also a time when you talk about, you started this first ever art gallery space in China outside Beijing, the Chinese art archive. So I understand that some of these studios now is also destroyed recently, correct?
Correct, but it's not a very unique situation in China. Probably about at least half of houses built 20, 30 years ago are being destroyed today because it's kind of rough condition. So top two photos relate to my first art studio. Is really this kind of temporary houses, but I'm always in love with this kind of so-called temporary houses. It's very basic, very essential, and I grew some grass there. I still remember the seeds of the grass is imported from maybe Denmark or somewhere, and it just in the market. I put those seeds in, but suddenly the seeds grow so fast. So I was amazed. That's why I took some photos of those grass, because unbelievable. Later I realized this studio is under high voltage lines. It's a good place to grow things. Really high voltage lines there. And again, there's some kind of evidence. And the bottom two photos is a studio I built. It's a very nice studio with good proportion and skylight. It's about $30,000 to build the whole studio in 30 days. So you know about Caochangdi.
Right.
I built so many buildings there. So since this space, I become architects. They all think I can build. So.
Before we talk about architect and architecture, do you think the way you create your artwork, how is it connected with your studio practice? Because it seems like your works are the skills getting bigger and bigger, and your studios are getting bigger and bigger as well. Well,
it's people think the space is big, but if you see this work on this corner, it only contains half of the work, but the work is not made of one day. Everything on the ground is my collection on the Neolithic stone axe, or it's about 3,600 pieces. It's it's a little bit more than what you have in your museum. And it takes a long time, but that's just half of the work. And without this kind of space, you cannot even display it. So that's just one single work.
It seems like this is also around the time when you are producing more artwork, having more interaction with the art world outside, and it's also the time when actually from the West perspective that Chinese contemporary art got a lot of attention, exposure. For example, in 1998, there was the first exhibition on contemporary Chinese art Inside Out at Asia Society, and also, of course, Chambers Fine Art opened in 1999. So what's this relationship between your own art creating while at the same time having more and more context with either artists or curators or architects that we are seeing here?
That time I'm interested in collecting or to make certain kind of works which relate to Chinese furniture or carpentry. but I never imagined anybody else would be interested in that. When people talk about Chinese art, they often trying to find this Chineseness in there. So my art is not obviously can be seen as a Chinese. So I never imagined I will become an artist in that time, but still I have an interest to making some objects because I'm deeply fascinated by since I have been collecting, and I have been doing collecting for quite some time then.
So you also talked, actually early on you touched about that you became an architect and you love doing it. So what is this in, so we saw that at the same time, you're making more in art, but you're also expanding your repertoire. You started to make installation, and then I think you also at some time made some music, and now you also endeavor into this architectural realm. So can you talk a little bit about what's so exciting about creating new spaces?
I become an architect only because when I moved back to Beijing, I stayed with my mom in an old courtyard house. But after I stayed with her about 6 years, she got really tired. She feels this that time I'm almost 40 years old, but she thinks I'm doing nothing. Yet, which she's true, and she thinks, I come back from the United States, never had U.S. citizenship, never really graduated from university, which I'm also surprised why I didn't do it. It's so easy for me. But something to do with my character really has a problem. I can easily graduate from any university. I was a very smart student, but I just hate campus. I don't like campus that much. Now I changed my view. In campus, a lot of good restaurants and bars and stuff. And at that time, I couldn't. And I don't know how to drive. I didn't marry. 40 years old for a Chinese man not married, some kind of problem there. And so one day we had an argument that she said, just move out. I take that seriously. I said, okay, it's time to move out. So I went to, not too far from her because I still want to go back to see her. So that's next to the airport way. So when the taxi take gas to airport, they would have empty taxi come back to the city, so I can take that taxi because I don't drive, so I can't go to see her. So I found a piece of land, asked the landlord. They said, oh yeah, you can rent it. I said, can I build? She said, it's not legal, but I will not stop you. Which is this sentence should be right on Chinese Constitution. So I said, perfect. I start to build. I built a beautiful house there with, I just said, $300. And, no, it's not $300, $30,000. And quickly, and I think it's quite beautiful. It's a minimal type of architecture. I build basically like a child would draw a house with one window, one door, and one road leading to that door. And I feel totally satisfied. That's my first architecture. And after I built it, that's a moment that China started booming. A lot of foreign architects to come to China. They want to find some houses, local people build, but all they found is this kind of European Louis or, French or Renaissance times copy. So they're pretty disappointed. So some very good architect come to my house. They said, oh, this guy knows how to build, he knows how to control his, his language, and I become an architect. So after their encouragement, actually, I think it's really misleading. But I built about 60 projects. This is a photo. I worked with Jack and Pierre, a Swiss architects firm, and we are doing. After 2000, we won the competition of the national stadium. We worked together.
For Olympics.
Olympic stadium. And we are working on developing a model. But that's the last project among my projects. After that, I decided not to do architecture anymore. So if you really have a project, don't think about me, I already quit.
So here you're working with Herzog de Meuron and studying different models for the Chinese stadium for the Olympics. But interestingly, even though this is a government state-sponsored project, it seems that this is also the time you became increasingly critical of the Chinese government and became more vocal as well through either blogs, we talked earlier, or other forms of social media.
I think two things made my change. First, by 2005, Chinese had a blog, they just come out. That time I was an architect, so they said, you're so well known as an architect. And actually my first show in Foreign Nation is invited by German architecture gallery to show my architecture. So that time nobody know I'm an artist. And so the architecture put me in a very political situation because you always have to deal with government. You have to think about how to develop, why develop, and a beautiful home, and why, So you always also have to work with rich developers. So you see the society in details and how it functions or why it doesn't function. So I have been thinking those and make a lot of argument. But at the beginning was kind of aesthetic argument. Later I think all those arguments relate to moral and right or wrong. It's related to philosophy. So I become writing more and more, and then I become very critical about all conditions. Another thing is, I get on internet. They invite me to open up a blog. That time I never touched a computer. I don't know how to type. They said, no, you will learn very fast. So I did learn very fast, and once I learned how to get on, I cannot get off. And I got deeply involved. I ended up in jail. I was beaten. I was, all kinds of things, trying to drag myself out, but it's not really possible. So I still have a bad habit to on Twitter or Instagram. Even I already behave much better, but I still sometimes be on this.
Okay, and before we're looking at these photos, they are significantly different from what we've been looking at so far, in a way that they lack any identifiable markers. If any of us, without your help, wouldn't know what these photos are telling us about. And I saw somewhere you were quoted saying that in the case with photography, where the original gesture may be unimportant, you can nevertheless make it a fact. So can you just talk a little bit about what photography means to you? Do you use it as a documentation? Do you, I think we all saw that he just actually took a picture while I was asking this question. So do you think photography as an archive, a way of you making a diary or a fine art? What does photography mean to you?
Photo is photo itself. It's not anything else. And it's not reality, it's not art, it's a photo. And so it has dignity of being as a photo, you can take it with very fine camera, very, very fine lens, or also you can take it with even a blurred photo. I love it, or a photo out of focus, or it's always show its own reality, and that reality you may never even understand. It takes years to look back to see. Okay, a bad photo can become a good photo. It changes, have its own life. So you always find something surprising in a photo.
So when you were looking through some of the photos that you said you never actually developed, even after you took them, will you have a sense of reliving your life?
Sometimes even I don't like to look at my past, or I don't care about my past that much. But still, it's quite ironic. You walk in circles, and the time always brings you back. It's like my memory functions a haunting you sometimes. So photo functions more or less like a memory or a note which may suddenly wake you up.
Wake up to reality?
I really encourage you to take some photos.
Well noted, thank you. Okay, so we will move forward about 25 years and a little bit away from this book, and looking at some of the newest projects that you are working on. So this is a monumental documentary film that you made recently addressing the global refugee crisis, and you titled it Human Flow. Is there any significance about the title itself? What's the meaning of flow here?
Well, we all know what happens in today's world. There's about 60 million, or 70 million, actually, it was not 68 million anymore, 70 million refugees. Every individual are being forced out of their home. Every 2 seconds, someone being forced out of their home, either by war or by famine or by all kind of danger. They have to escape. They have to give up the location where they were born with, or they understand the perfect well, but they have to go to some foreign areas and they're trying to survive, trying to give their children a chance, trying to give to protect their elderly parents, and take the most dangerous journey. And that journey leads them to nowhere. Very often they're being blocked, they're being refused, they're being colored into very dirty colors, and to be insulted. And it's a journey which can be most painful and dark and endless. But still, more people become refugees today. That's today's condition. So when I make this film, I try to give a more global understanding about the history of refugees in the history, or in our life. If we extend a little bit longer, our parents or grandparents, they are refugees at a certain moment or some locations. So this is not a current regional refugee crisis. It's a human crisis, humanitarian crisis. So I try to give a more honest perspective about the situation.
And so this is a recent exhibition, and can you just tell us a little bit what we're looking at here, please?
I've never been in this location, actually. We set up this exhibition in Denmark, and it's a museum's window. We packed with thousands left sleeving jacket. Those jackets we picked up in Lesbos, which is a Greece island. Around over 500,000 refugees come to Europe through Turkey, landed in Lesbos, and they throw those jacket on the shore. So those are the jacket.
It's a very beautiful but also very moving piece, and this is another recent work also related to this series. And for me, this is really another example of you constantly challenging yourself, but always remain very grounded and full of humanity. So my question for you is, among all the happenings in the world right now, why did you choose the topic of the refugee crisis?
I think the journey to survive, to find a way to let the humanity survive, or to make to escape from danger is human nature. And those people who make that kind of choice, I think it's already very courageous and a very powerful act. And since 2015, I had a chance to have my passport and leave China. So I got deeply involved with this kind of trying to understand the international politics and trying to understand our modern understanding about human rights and about all those issues. That's why in almost about 20-30 of my experiences, I always trying to put the restructure or to make new works in relating to this new human condition.
Thank you. What is the material?
The work is made of bamboo. This is long time design and construction in Shandong province. There's Weifang. It's a place in since ancient time they make kites and two-dimensional. So I start to use that to make a three-dimensional and try to transform this scale. It's very skillful. It's very lightest material, but very durable, very strong material to deal with the topics I am interested or I'm deeply emotionally involved. So how to transform a language, and I always trying to use different materials and different techniques, and leading to what I'm interested or what current condition is. And also this is a studio in China. You see the studio is, I use this studio for past 12 years till maybe 2 months later being demolished. So this is the last work we made in this studio. So the work itself become refugees. And it's showing in Los Angeles Matsutaro Foundation now. If you happen to go to Los Angeles, and you can see the show.
I know you're continuing your traveling to document the different refugee centers and groups right now, even as we speak. And recently, you traveled to Bangladesh to interview and film Rohingya refugees.
Yes, for me, it's not a topic or a choice. It's my life. I share my life with the people I care, and I share my feelings and extend to my position to have experience and to trying to express my concern. Rohingya refugees are from Myanmar and in right after we shooting the film, actually, there's about 700,000 people gathered and in one location, which is a little bit larger than Central Park. So now it's almost over 1 million refugees there. And I just want to meet them. I just want to see, it's very simple. It's not I want to make a great project or I want to have some other great mission. I just want to see how 1 million people being like a tree pulled out from the ground and to have to go to another nation. Who are they and how they survive in this kind of condition. So I went there with a few friends and a team. And my son, I always trying to bring my son, he's about 10 years old. And has been many locations with me. Locations people always say, oh, you shouldn't bring your son, you shouldn't even bring yourself. So I said, that's life. And you learn so much by really facing the condition. Then I truly start to understand why Confucius in the 2,000 years ago to say a knowledgeable man should not just read 1,000 books, but really travel 1,000 miles. That time, travel 1,000 miles is on the, not even horseback, on donkey's back, So it's very difficult in these mountains. So, but I think that's where true knowledge comes from. You have to be there, you have to move your body to there, and you have to face in the situation. So that's why I went there. Obviously, it's for very selfish reason, just trying to understand what's going on. And I meet those people. Those people I realize is really very kind, very soft type of people. I couldn't find a reason why those people are being victimized. Why they have to, the house has to be burned, the women has to be raped, and all the children has to be killed. But it's a reality. It's part of our world. It's a reality. We all feel very responsible for this kind of thing happening at the same time in the 21st century. We are not supposed to have this kind of thing happening.
Well, actually, with that kind of very comment, it's very hard to respond. But
change the subject.
I am.
We have 7 minutes.
Slightly related, but also change the subject. Seems to me that a lot of what you do. In your life, art and the life is very blended. There's not a clear line of what is public and what is private. Like where you're doing this work, you also bring your family, and inevitably, I would think they have some impact on your family members, on your personal life as well.
Yeah, I'm kind of stupid. Sometimes I sit so close to you, I think you're part of my family, which is not true. It's nothing to do with me. But, I always get emotionally involved. I always get deeply involved. And sometimes it's very hard to pull myself out even.
Wow. So, looking forward to, in addition to what that you're going to continue this Human Flow project, this refugee crisis project, we also heard recently that you are actually planning to move back to the US. So 25 years ago, you made a very conscious decision to move away from US and then move back to China. But now you're thinking of moving back. So I know there are a lot of things change both in you and in the society and in both countries, but can you just tell us a little bit more about, what's this decision about and what you see that it's attractive for you to move back to the US?
First, I make stupid decisions. It's not really something attract me. I would do very often. It's just the opposite. It's I have 100 reasons not to come back. This seems the reason become more and more daily. But I'm quite lucky I haven't moved back yet. Yeah. So I make it short.
Well, so this is an image that actually we showed one of your works at the Mega Cities exhibition here at MFA. So I want to end with that note, and now knowing that you are moving back to the US, we really look forward to seeing you more here in this country and especially in Boston. So thank you.
Thank you.